Most people never make it through awakening. Alan Watts explains the dark test of the soul. The most difficult part of the spiritual journey is not waking up, it's staying awake. Alan Watts once suggested that true awakening feels less like enlightenment and more like a collapse of everything you thought was real. In today's video from Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving into why most people never make it through this awakening and how the dark test of the soul is actually the beginning of your greatest transformation. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Have you ever experienced a moment when the world felt strangely unified, as if the boundaries between you and everything else dissolved? If so, share your experience in the comments below. Your insight may help someone else on their path. 1. The illusion of the separate self is shattered during awakening. Most people move through life tightly attached to a personal storyline. Your name, your memories, your roles, your beliefs. Yet Alan Watts reminds us that this separate self is only a mask, and the true process of spiritual awakening begins the moment that mask starts to crack. You may not notice it at first, but it appears in those strange, sacred moments when the boundaries of you dissolve. When a piece of music absorbs you so completely that the listener disappears. When standing under trees makes you feel as if nature is not around you, but happening through you. Or when washing dishes becomes so effortless that there is no doer. Only the simple movement of water and light. These moments are not accidents. They are small fractures in the illusion, revealing that the separate self you have been defending your entire life is not the fixed identity you believed it was. And this is exactly why awakening feels frightening, because the mind interprets the dissolving of identity as death, even though it is the beginning of clarity. As this illusion starts to fall apart, the mind instinctively panics and clings harder to labels, opinions, routines, and familiar emotional patterns. It tries to rebuild the image of me again and again because it believes survival depends on it. But spiritual awakening is the gentle invitation to see this panic without becoming it, to notice fear as an echo of habit rather than a sign of danger. When you allow the moment to unfold without rushing to rebuild your story, you begin to sense something deeper. That what you truly are is not the identity you perform, but the awareness that silently witnesses everything, every thought, every emotion, every role rising and fading within it. From this space, life changes in subtle but powerful ways. Relationships soften because you no longer argue to protect a fragile image of yourself. Creativity flows more naturally because it no longer needs to impress anyone. Even simple routines feel lighter because you stop pretending there is a separate you controlling everything, and instead you participate in life as it unfolds. This is the heart of spirituality and the essence of spiritual awakening. The discovery that separation was a story told by the mind, not the truth of your existence. Still, the mind will resist. It will ask, who am I without my story? What happens if I let go? And the compassionate response is simply to watch these questions arise and dissolve like any other thought. You do not need to answer them. You only need to stay present long enough to see that nothing essential is being lost, only the illusion that kept you small. The dark test of the soul is not a battle to be won, but a series of quiet moments in which you choose presence over panic, awareness over identity, openness over fear. And in those moments, the illusion of the separate self collapses naturally, revealing a deeper, calmer, more honest way of living, one in which softness becomes strength, unity becomes clarity, and life itself becomes the teacher guiding you forward. If you're ready to break free from the illusion of the separate self, comment below, "I choose awakening." Let this be your commitment to seeing life with new eyes and stepping boldly into your spiritual transformation. 2. Awakening is a collapse, not a comfort. Awakening is a collapse, not a comfort. And when Alan Watts explored this truth, he revealed that spiritual awakening is not the peaceful rising most people fantasize about, but a profound collapse of everything you believed yourself to be. A shattering of the personal narrative you spent years building. You feel the psychological map of me begin to disintegrate, and as this inner structure falls apart, you step into a raw sense of groundlessness where your mind loses the familiar reference points it once clung to for safety. The ego, terrified of losing control, interprets this as danger, as if something essential within you is dying, and so it urges you to return to old habits, old identities, and old stories, because they offer the illusion of stability. This is why Alan Watts often said that awakening is not about gaining something new, but about watching what is false fall away. Because what collapses is never your true self, but the layers of conditioning that have wrapped around you for years. As this collapse deepens, you feel the tension between who you were taught to be and who you truly are. And this tension becomes the dark test of the soul. Most people turn back at this threshold, not because awakening is impossible, but because the disorientation feels unbearable. They have never been taught that losing the false self is part of genuine spirituality and essential for real spiritual development. You, however, are being invited to stay with the discomfort long enough to see what exists beneath it. When your identity starts dissolving, it can feel like the floor of your life has fallen open. Yet this emptiness is not a void meant to swallow you. It is room for you to expand, to see beyond the rigid personality you used to defend so fiercely. In these moments, you meet the part of yourself that has always watched from the background, the awareness untouched by your past, your roles, your successes, or your traumas. This awareness is not collapsing, it is emerging. As you allow the collapse to unfold, you begin to understand that awakening is less like climbing a ladder and more like shedding a heavy skin. You do not become someone new. You stop pretending to be someone you never were. And even though your mind may resist, insisting that certainty is safer than truth, you slowly recognize that the collapse is not destroying you. It is dissolving your illusions, one by one, until only what is real remains. The fear you feel is simply the ego losing its grip, and the confusion you feel is the old narrative unraveling, making space for a deeper, quieter clarity to rise. This is the moment when spiritual development becomes visible, not as an idea you talk about, but as an inner shift you can feel in your bones. Awakening asks you to surrender the comfort of your old identity and trust the unknown that opens inside you. It asks you to let the collapse happen without running from it, without distracting yourself, without trying to rebuild your old life. Because when the collapse finishes, you realize that nothing essential was lost. Only the walls around your true self crumbled. The me you thought you were dissolves, and the awareness you truly are steps forward, steady, spacious, and unafraid. And as Alan Watts said, you do not transform yourself, you simply get out of your own way, reminding you that awakening is not about effort, it is about allowing. If this message resonates with your awakening journey, comment below. I choose inner truth over comfort. 3. Spiritual ego is the most seductive trap. The most deceptive obstacle on the path of awakening is the rise of the spiritual ego. And you need to understand this clearly because it appears precisely at the moment when you believe you've escaped ego altogether. After your old identity collapses and the beliefs that once defined you begin to crumble, the mind instinctively searches for a new story to attach itself to. And often, it chooses the most seductive story of all, the identity of being spiritual, being awakened, being a seeker of truth. You begin to think of yourself not as the person you once were, but as the meditator, the mystic, the enlightened one. And although these labels look pure, they are still labels, still masks, still roles you perform for yourself. Alan Watts warned that the biggest ego trip is getting rid of the ego. And when Carl Jung said, "Beware of unearned wisdom," he was pointing to the same danger. The mind can turn even your spiritual progress into another badge of superiority. This is why spiritual materialism is so seductive. You start collecting mystical experiences the way others collect status symbols, admiring your own insight, your calmness, your intuition, your connection to the universe, and instead of dissolving ego, you secretly strengthen it. You meditate not for inner freedom, but for spiritual identity. You chase synchronicities, not to listen, but to be validated. You talk about energy, awakening, or signs not to share truth, but to feel like you belong to a higher world. Yet all of this is still ego dressed in sacred clothing. As this illusion deepens, you drift from genuine awakening and move into a performance of spirituality. You try to look awakened, sound awakened, behave awakened, but the more you perform it, the further you drift from the truth. The spiritual ego wants to feel chosen, elevated, special, and it whispers, "You are different from them," creating a subtle divide between you and the world, even as you believe you are transcending separation. This is why the trap is so dangerous. It feels righteous, noble, and enlightened. But true spiritual wisdom strips away not only your old identity, but also the spiritual identity you build to replace it. Because authentic awakening has no interest in titles, roles, or being spiritual. Real awakening is quiet, humble, soft, and deeply human. It makes you more grounded, not more special. More compassionate, not more superior. More aware, not more inflated. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that awakening is not something you wear like a robe. It is something you live through sincerity, honesty, and a willingness to see your own shadow without hiding behind sacred language or mystical airs. When you begin to see this clearly, you understand what both Alan Watts and Carl Jung were trying to tell you. That ego can survive even its own death, that it can disguise itself as light, and that the real test of the soul is not whether you look spiritual, but whether you can release every identity, good, bad, sacred, or ordinary, and stand in the truth without needing to be anything at all. Only then does awakening begin to reveal itself, not as a title or a personality, but as a quiet unfolding of freedom, presence, and reality as it is, without performance, without pretense, and without the seductive mask of the spiritual ego. 4. Teachers and gurus can become new attachments. Teachers and gurus often appear as lights on the path, yet that light becomes dangerous the moment you turn it into a substitute for your own seeing, because the subtle trap of spirituality is not in following a teacher, but in believing that someone else can finish the journey for you. You may admire a guru's clarity, their confidence, or the way their presence calms the room. And at first, this admiration feels innocent. But slowly, quietly, it can grow into dependency. And dependency becomes the very chain that prevents spiritual awakening. Not because the teacher intends to mislead you, but because your mind begins to whisper that awakening is something they possess and you must earn. The moment you believe that truth lives in someone else more than it lives in you, you reinforce the separation between seeker and sage, between the one who is lacking and the one who is complete. And this separation is exactly what awakening dissolves. So the trap is subtle and psychological, not dramatic or obvious. You may hear a teacher say, "Look inward." Yet instead of looking, you wait for them to give you confirmation that you've looked correctly. You may hear them say, "The answer is in your awareness." Yet you keep returning to their words to feel safe. And in this cycle, you replace your own inner authority with their voice, which Alan Watts warns becomes a new form of imprisonment disguised as devotion. This is why the path of spirituality demands honesty, not the performance of being humble before a teacher, but the courage to observe your own mind in real time, the longing to be led, the fear of being wrong, the desire to be chosen by someone who seems wiser. These tendencies are not failures. They are invitations to see the ego's hunger for reassurance. A teacher can illuminate these blind spots, but no teacher can cross the threshold for you, because awakening is not passed from hand to hand like a relic. It is recognized directly in your own awareness. Every genuine teacher, from ancient mystics to modern psychologists like Carl Jung, ultimately points you back to yourself. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this truth means that no spiritual guide, no matter how enlightened, can replace the work of looking. When you idealize a guru, you create a hierarchy that keeps you small. And this hierarchy becomes a veil over your own perception. When you fear disappointing a teacher, you silence the very intuition awakening is trying to strengthen. When you imitate their tone, their manner, their metaphors, you drift further from the raw, honest seeing that spiritual awakening requires. The danger is not the teacher. The danger is forgetting that the teacher is only a finger pointing to the moon. And if you stare at the finger too long, you never see the sky. A real teacher becomes a mirror, not a master. They reflect your potential rather than claiming ownership over your progress. They help you see your patterns, but they never ask to replace your discernment. They guide your questions, but they never demand that you surrender your inner compass. If someone's authority makes you shrink, step back. If someone's wisdom makes you doubt your own lived experience, breathe and return to your center. And if your spiritual practice becomes more about pleasing a guru than meeting yourself honestly, you have traded one identity for another, the identity of a seeker who forever believes the summit is somewhere outside themselves. The heartbeat of awakening is direct recognition, noticing awareness as it is, unborrowed, unmediated, free. A teacher can clear the dust from the window, but they cannot give you the sky. They can describe stillness, but they cannot silence your mind for you. They can speak truth, but they cannot hand you seeing. The moment you understand this, spirituality stops being performance and becomes presence. And the authority you once placed in another returns quietly to your own breath, your own perception, your own inner life, the only place real awakening has ever lived. If this message has opened your eyes to a deeper truth, leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our spiritual insights. Comment below. I am free from all attachments, to affirm your growth and alignment on this awakening journey. 5. Chasing spiritual experiences distracts from truth. Mystical experiences can feel like the brightest moments on your path of spirituality because visions, bursts of cosmic consciousness, and waves of bliss make you believe that something extraordinary is finally happening to you. They are seductive precisely because they lift you above your ordinary life and give you a taste of something larger, something divine, something that feels like a secret doorway into the universe. Yet as powerful as these moments are, they rise and fall like waves on the ocean, brilliant, dramatic, unforgettable, but never permanent. And this is where many people unknowingly step into the trap that Alan Watts warned about. Because when these highs fade, the mind instantly begins searching for the next one, convinced that spiritual development must mean collecting more highs, deeper visions, and stronger sensations. The truth is that this constant chasing pulls you away from the very awakening you are hoping to reach. You become attached to the waves instead of learning to rest in the ocean beneath them. When I speak directly to you, I want you to see how subtle this trap is, because it disguises itself as progress. You tell yourself you are growing because you felt something intense. You tell yourself you are awakening because you saw something unusual. But when the high disappears, as it always does, you feel lost again, and you start believing that you must chase another experience to stay on the path. This is what many teachers call spiritual materialism, where inner states become spiritual trophies and mystical moments become something you try to possess rather than understand. What most people never realize is that true awakening is not a moment of intensity at all. It is the quiet, steady, ever-present awareness that exists underneath every moment when you are joyful, when you are afraid, when you are confused, and when you are simply washing dishes or walking outside under an ordinary sky. This awareness is always here, always unmoving, always watching, always holding every experience that comes and goes. It is the ocean itself, not the waves that briefly rise upon it. And because people are so addicted to the waves, they overlook the stillness that never leaves. The mind loves drama, proof, excitement, emotional fireworks, anything that feels special enough to confirm you are making progress. But spirituality matures when you stop needing proof and start realizing that truth does not need to shout. Awakening is not loud. It is not sudden. It is not a cosmic fireworks show. It is a quiet seeing, a grounded clarity, an inner steadiness that remains even when nothing extraordinary is happening. When you can rest in that awareness, when you can sit in silence without waiting for a vision or a sign, that is when real spiritual development begins to unfold. You stop chasing the extraordinary and start noticing the sacred in the ordinary. You stop measuring your worth by how intense your experiences are and begin recognizing the deeper transformation happening beneath the surface. And in that shift, you finally understand that you were never meant to collect waves. You were meant to sink into the vast, calm, unshakable ocean that has been holding you all along. 6. The dark night of the soul is unavoidable. Every authentic awakening leads you into the dark night of the soul, a place where everything you once relied on begins to fall apart. It feels as if life is deliberately pulling the ground from beneath your feet. Your spiritual practices stop working. Your beliefs lose their meaning. And even the presence of God seems to vanish. You start to question yourself. Why is this happening when I have done everything right? But the truth is, this collapse is not punishment. It is purification. The dark night burns away the illusions of control and the layers of spiritual pride that keep you attached to the idea of being enlightened. As Alan Watts once said, you are the universe experiencing itself. And to realize that truth, you must first lose every concept that separates you from it. This phase can feel terrifying because the mind no longer finds comfort in its usual certainties. You can no longer rely on spiritual highs or external validation. The prayers that once brought peace may now bring silence. The rituals that once grounded you now feel hollow. Yet this emptiness is not meaningless. It is sacred space where the false self dies so that the true self can awaken. Carl Jung called this descent a necessary stage in individuation, reminding us that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. When you fall into this darkness, the ego resists with all its strength, telling you to run toward new teachers, new philosophies, or new paths. But every escape only delays the transformation. The darkness you avoid today will return tomorrow until you dare to face it fully. When you stop running and allow yourself to sit within the unknown, something profound begins to unfold. The despair softens into stillness. The silence reveals wisdom. What once felt like abandonment now feels like invitation, a call from your soul to surrender every belief that kept you separate from life itself. In that surrender, you discover that God was never absent. Only your image of God was. You realize that awakening is not about reaching light, but about embracing both light and shadow with equal reverence. The dark night of the soul, then, is not a mistake in your spiritual journey. It is the journey. It dismantles every illusion until nothing false remains, leaving only what is pure, whole, and eternal within you. Through this passage, spiritual wisdom deepens not as theory, but as lived truth. And when you finally emerge, you do so not as someone who has found, but as someone who has become one with the divine pulse that has always been within. If this message resonates with you, comment below. I'm facing the dark night with courage. Your voice helps us understand you better and create deeper content for your journey. 7. The end of seeking is the beginning of true freedom. The end of seeking is often misunderstood because the mind believes spirituality and spiritual awakening must be earned through effort, discipline, or extraordinary experiences. Yet the deeper truth is far simpler and far more confronting. There is no path to awakening because the one who is walking the path is the same consciousness they are searching for. The moment you begin to see this, you notice that the seeker and the sought have never been two separate forces. They are a single movement of awareness, looking at itself through different masks. This is why so many teachers repeat the same paradoxical truth. What you are seeking is already here. And the journey is not about becoming something greater, but about dissolving every false layer that convinces you that you are anything less than the ground of being itself. The ego resists this because it thrives on becoming better, becoming wiser, becoming awakened. But awakening is not an accomplishment. It is the quiet falling away of the illusion that there is someone inside you who needs to reach a higher state. As this illusion dissolves, you start recognizing that the identity you once protected so fiercely was nothing more than a temporary shape formed by memory, fear, habit, and conditioning. When that shape begins to soften, what remains is not a new or improved version of you, but the open, clear presence that has always been watching your life unfold from behind the scenes. This presence is not personal. It does not have preferences, judgments, or attachments, and it does not chase enlightenment or resist suffering. It simply is. And when you begin to rest as that presence even for a moment, you experience what many call true freedom, because the pressure to become fades, and the longing to find something outside yourself loses its grip. You realize that awareness has always been here, quietly holding every moment of your life, and nothing you could seek would bring you closer to yourself. From this clarity, even the most ordinary parts of life become sacred. When you wash your hands, you feel the water without a thinker behind the sensation. When you walk, there is only the movement of walking without the story of the walker. When you breathe, there is simply breath, not your breath, but breath happening in the vast field of awareness. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, returning to ordinary life with extraordinary clarity, seeing that the divine is not hidden in distant visions, but woven into the simplest moments you used to overlook. You begin to understand why mystics say enlightenment is not about escaping the world, but seeing it as it truly is, without distortion. As even the identity of the awakened one dissolves, something deeper reveals itself. The recognition that consciousness is not inside you. You are inside consciousness. You are a temporary expression of something timeless, appearing for a while as a human life. And when this becomes clear, the game of becoming ends. What survives is not the personality you once identified with, but the spacious awareness that shines through it. In that recognition, life stops being a search and becomes a simple, peaceful unfolding, where presence sees itself through every experience, every breath, every step, and realizes it was never divided to begin with. In the end, the dark test of awakening is not meant to break you. It is meant to reveal you. As Alan Watts teaches, awakening strips away the illusion of separation so you can finally meet the truth of who you are. If today's message from Spiritual Wisdom has helped you see your own journey more clearly, let it be a reminder that every moment of confusion, fear, or surrender is guiding you toward deeper awareness and inner freedom. If this spoke to your soul, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming teachings. Your awakening matters, and you don't have to walk this path alone. 10 psychological rituals that will awaken your hidden power. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Have you ever met someone who isn't the richest, the most talented, or the most famous, yet their very presence feels magnetic, calm, clear, and grounded? That energy doesn't come from luck. It comes from inner work. Jung believed that true power isn't about controlling the outer world, but understanding the inner one. In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore 10 psychological rituals that awaken your hidden potential, not to make you better, but to make you truer. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own daily habits. Which of these practices could help you live with more presence, peace, and authenticity? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes one conscious shift within can quietly transform your entire world. 1. Self-observation instead of auto-reaction. Most people live their entire lives unconsciously, reacting rather than choosing. They are caught in a loop of automatic behaviors, repeating the same emotional responses again and again, without realizing that every reaction drains their power. Carl Jung taught that true awareness begins the moment you observe yourself before you react. That tiny pause between what happens and how you respond is where your freedom lives. It's not just a moment, it's a portal. Within that silence, you awaken the power to choose understanding over anger, calm over chaos, and consciousness over compulsion. This is the first step of spiritual awakening, learning to witness rather than to react. When you start observing your emotions instead of being ruled by them, you begin to see their hidden patterns. You notice how quickly irritation rises, how easily you feel defensive, how your body tightens when you feel misunderstood. But instead of identifying with those emotions, you become the watcher, the one who sees without judging. That act alone shifts everything. Observation is not suppression. It's awareness infused with compassion. When you simply allow your emotions to exist without resistance, they reveal their roots. Anger often hides pain. Fear often masks vulnerability. Sadness often signals a deeper truth you've been avoiding. Through gentle awareness, these emotions transform from enemies into teachers. Jung's great insight was that everything we refuse to see in ourselves becomes the unconscious force directing our lives. By observing our inner world, we bring light into those shadowed corners of the psyche. This is not easy. It demands courage, honesty, and patience. Yet each time you pause before reacting, you reclaim your energy from the unconscious. You stop feeding the patterns that keep you stuck. That pause, that single breath before you speak or act, is the moment your soul takes back control from the ego. And in that instant, you are no longer a prisoner of your emotions. You are their master. Self-observation is the daily ritual that strengthens spiritual wisdom. It is a practice of remembering that you are not your anger, not your fear, not your insecurity. You are the awareness behind them. This awareness doesn't seek to destroy emotions, but to understand them. When someone provokes you, the old self wants to strike back, to prove its worth. But the awakened self sees the situation for what it is, a mirror reflecting an unhealed wound. Instead of reacting, you breathe, you observe, you choose peace. Slowly, you realize that no one can truly disturb your inner harmony unless you give them permission. Each moment of awareness is an act of freedom. Every time you pause and witness rather than react, you expand your consciousness. life becomes less about controlling external events and more about mastering your inner energy. This is where true spirituality begins, not in escaping the world, but in engaging with it consciously. To observe yourself without judgment is to walk the path of healing. It is to transform reaction into wisdom, emotion into energy, and confusion into clarity. That is how spiritual awakening unfolds quietly, moment by moment, within the sacred pause where consciousness is born. Have you ever truly practiced self-observation instead of reacting on autopilot? If you have, share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone's spiritual awakening. If not, comment, "I will begin observing myself," and take the first step toward unlocking your hidden power through spiritual wisdom. 2. Balancing, doing, and being. Society worships action, achievement, and productivity. But the truth is, your soul doesn't evolve through constant doing, it awakens through stillness. You've been taught that slowing down means falling behind. Yet in reality, silence is where your deepest form of spirituality and spiritual development begins. When you pause the endless motion and simply allow yourself to be, you reconnect with your intuition, that quiet inner compass that speaks softly beneath the noise of the world. The more you chase external validation, the further you drift from the sacred language of your soul. But when you surrender to stillness, your energy recalibrates, your emotions settle, and clarity rises like dawn after a long storm. In this sacred stillness, you begin to see that busyness is not strength, it's distraction. Constant movement clouds your intuition and scatters your energy, while silence gathers it. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." The moment you stop trying to control everything and simply observe, your awareness expands. You start to feel the subtle rhythm of your being, the divine pulse beneath your thoughts. It's in this quiet awareness that real transformation happens, not through struggle, but through surrender. The soul doesn't need more noise. It needs your attention. And when you give it that attention, your inner world begins to harmonize, guiding your outer life with grace and precision. Silence is not emptiness, it's presence. It's the space where your consciousness and your soul meet and communicate. When you create moments of stillness, whether through mindful breathing, meditation, or sitting quietly in nature, you begin to bridge the gap between doing and being. You realize that doing without being is mechanical, but being without doing is divine alignment. From this balance, your actions become more intentional, flowing naturally from inner peace rather than external pressure. Stillness doesn't take you away from life, it roots you deeper in it. And in that depth, you discover your hidden power, the quiet, unwavering strength that doesn't shout but radiates. You no longer act out of fear or hurry. You move from calm awareness. This is the secret of all spiritual masters. They know that power is not in force, but in flow. The more you align with your inner silence, the more you realize that life is not something to be chased, it's something to be attuned to. Every moment of pause becomes an act of alignment. Every breath a bridge between heaven and earth, between your human self and your higher consciousness. In learning to balance doing and being, you begin to live from the center of your soul, not the edge of your anxiety. You act, but your action is conscious. You rest, but your rest is purposeful. This is the art of spiritual development, where stillness becomes your teacher, silence becomes your healer, and being becomes your truest form of power. 3. Cultivating inner honesty. Stillness is not merely the absence of noise, it is the mirror of your soul, where everything you've been avoiding rises to the surface. Your fears, your insecurities, your hidden wounds. It is in those quiet spaces that the shadows you've long suppressed begin to speak. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." His words remind us that true growth doesn't come from pretending to be positive all the time, but from courageously facing the parts of ourselves we've kept buried. To cultivate inner honesty is to stand unflinchingly before your reflection and admit what you truly feel: jealousy, anger, pain, desire, and to do so without judgment. This is where healing begins, because the moment you acknowledge your truth, you stop fighting against yourself. The mind loves illusions. It loves to protect you with excuses, stories, and masks that help you fit into a world that demands perfection. But the cost of denial is authenticity. The cost of suppression is peace. Every time you ignore what you feel, your body remembers, your heart tightens, your energy dims. Honesty is not an act of weakness. It is the foundation of all spiritual wisdom. When you dare to see yourself clearly, you step out of the fog of self-deception and into the light of awareness. You no longer fear your darkness because you understand that your darkness holds your greatest potential. Every shadow is a lesson disguised as pain, waiting for your acceptance to transform it into power. Jealousy reveals your unfulfilled longing. Fear shows you where faith is missing. Pain teaches you how deeply you can love. This is the alchemy of consciousness, turning the raw, heavy emotions of your humanity into the gold of understanding. Jung believed that wholeness is achieved not by rejecting parts of ourselves, but by integrating them. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel, and you cannot transform what you will not face. To look within is to uncover the architecture of your psyche, to meet the hidden child, the wounded lover, the silent warrior, and to embrace them all as sacred. This is not a journey of perfection, but of honesty, where every truth accepted becomes another step toward freedom. As you practice this ritual of self-honesty, you begin to see that the shadow is not your enemy, but your teacher. It reveals the blind spots in your mind and the hidden motives in your heart. It shows you why you react, why you fear, why you cling. And with every layer you uncover, you reclaim a fragment of your power. In that reclamation lies transformation. Inner honesty turns your pain into wisdom, your resistance into surrender, and your fear into fuel. When you can sit in silence with your truth and not flinch, when you can face your inner storms and still choose peace, you awaken something ancient and indestructible within you. That is the essence of Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom, the understanding that to awaken your hidden power, you must first walk through your own darkness and make it conscious. For only then can the light truly belong to you. If this message resonated with you, declare it boldly in the comments. I choose inner honesty and spiritual growth. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights inspired by Carl Jung's timeless teachings. 4. Protecting your energetic boundaries. Not every heaviness you carry belongs to you. Much of what weighs on your spirit may be the energy of others' unspoken fears, expectations, and emotional residue that have quietly settled within your field. Carl Jung warned that when you become entangled in the energy of others, your own soul begins to dim. Protecting your energy does not mean building walls or isolating yourself from life. It means learning to stay centered in your truth, even as the world swirls around you. It means realizing that not everything you feel is yours to heal, and not every storm requires your participation. When you protect your energetic boundaries, you preserve your inner light so you can give from fullness, not depletion. You are no longer reacting to life. You are responding with awareness, grace, and power. Your energy is sacred. It is the essence of your vitality, intuition, and connection to the divine. Think of it as a flame, steady, radiant, and alive. Every time you allow negativity, guilt, or the emotions of others to infiltrate your space, that flame flickers. Jung believed that the soul loses its clarity when it identifies with everything around it. Protecting your energy, therefore, is an act of spiritual awakening. It is the process of reclaiming your essence from the noise of the collective. It's about remembering that your empathy is a gift, not a burden, and that you can be compassionate without being consumed. By observing what drains you and what nourishes you, you begin to master the subtle art of energetic discernment. You start to notice how certain people, conversations, or environments either raise your vibration or pull it down. And with each realization, you step deeper into spiritual wisdom, choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion. Boundaries are not barriers. They are the architecture of your inner sanctuary. They allow your spirit to breathe freely and your intuition to flourish. Protecting your energy might mean saying no to what feels misaligned, spending more time in solitude, or grounding yourself before and after social interactions. These are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of reverence for your soul. Jung's teachings remind us that individuation, the journey of becoming your truest self, requires protecting your psychic integrity. You cannot awaken to your highest potential if you are constantly entangled in the energetic debris of others. Your task is to stay rooted in your center while the world moves around you, to let your light expand without letting it scatter. When you learn to protect your energy, you become a calm presence in a chaotic world. You stop absorbing emotions that aren't yours and start radiating a frequency that heals without effort. Others will feel your strength, not because you are hard to reach, but because your spirit is whole. This is the heart of spirituality, to live open yet grounded, compassionate yet self-contained, loving yet sovereign. Protecting your energy is not withdrawal from life. It is participation from a place of power. It is the quiet confidence that allows you to serve, love, and create without losing yourself in the process. Through spiritual awakening, you realize that the more you honor your boundaries, the brighter your light becomes, and that light, once preserved, becomes the force that transforms everything it touches. 5. Practicing psychological discipline. Discipline is not about control. It is about inner harmony and alignment between your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When these three forces move together, you stop fighting yourself and start flowing with life. Discipline is the art of transforming chaos into clarity, resistance into rhythm, and fear into focus. It's not a harsh restriction, but rather a sacred structure that allows your energy to move freely and purposefully. through small, consistent actions, waking up when you said you would, keeping your word, finishing what you start, you build an unshakable trust within yourself. Every time you honor a promise you've made to your own soul, you strengthen the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind, which is the essence of spiritual development. As Carl Jung taught, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Discipline is what makes that illumination possible. When you live without discipline, your mind becomes a battlefield, filled with unfinished intentions and scattered emotions. But once you learn to guide your energy with precision, your thoughts gain clarity, your emotions find calm, and your actions carry power. You begin to notice that discipline doesn't confine you, it liberates you. It allows you to direct your energy toward creation rather than conflict. You stop seeking instant pleasure and begin to cultivate lasting peace. Every act of self-discipline becomes a quiet declaration that you are no longer at the mercy of external chaos, but guided by internal order. This is how discipline becomes a form of spirituality, a devotion to the highest part of yourself. The more you practice, the more subtle shifts you'll notice. Confusion turns into focus. Hesitation becomes confidence, and procrastination transforms into purpose. You stop reacting to life and start responding with awareness. Emotional storms lose their grip on you because you've learned to pause, breathe, and observe instead of getting lost in them. Discipline teaches you to harness emotion instead of being ruled by it, to turn impulse into insight and desire into direction. It refines your consciousness like fire purifying gold, burning away what's false and revealing what's real. Through discipline, your mind stops being a restless wanderer and becomes a devoted servant to your higher calling. True freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from doing what aligns with your soul, even when it's difficult. Each time you choose consistency over comfort, honesty over avoidance, and purpose over distraction, you awaken a deeper layer of strength. Discipline is how the ordinary becomes sacred, how a simple daily choice turns into spiritual evolution. It transforms repetition into ritual, effort into embodiment, and willpower into wisdom. The more you align your mind, heart, and actions, the more you experience inner peace, the quiet power that allows your consciousness to rise above fear. This is the hidden power within you, not to control, but to align, not to suppress, but to transcend. Through discipline, spirituality becomes practical, and spiritual development becomes your way of living. If this message resonates with you, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on spiritual awakening and self-mastery. Comment below, I choose discipline over distraction, and let's grow stronger together on this journey of inner power. 6. Acceptance of paradox. Real spiritual wisdom is born when you dare to embrace paradox, the union of light and darkness, of power and fragility, of love and fear. Carl Jung once said, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." What he meant is that true understanding never comes from choosing one side of your nature while rejecting the other, but from learning to integrate both. When you deny your anger to appear peaceful, or suppress your sorrow to look strong, you split yourself in two. But when you begin to honor all parts of yourself, the calm and the chaos, the confidence and the insecure, you start to heal the silent war inside your soul. In doing so, you begin to feel the harmony that arises not from control, but from acceptance. You see, life itself is made of contradictions. There is no sunrise without night, no courage without fear, no transformation without pain. When you reject darkness, you also reject half of your strength, because even the shadow serves a sacred purpose. Jung believed that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So, when you dare to look into your fears without shame, you don't become weaker, you become whole. The more you allow both joy and sorrow to shape you, the more you begin to understand that every emotion is a thread in the tapestry of your soul. To live with spiritual wisdom means to walk gently between opposites, to cry and still be grateful, to fall and still rise, to doubt and still have faith. Wholeness is not about purity or perfection. It's about integration. Every time you allow your heart to break open, you make room for deeper light to enter. Every time you accept your contradictions, your energy becomes more aligned, balanced, and powerful. That is where your hidden strength lies, not in being one thing, but in being everything you truly are. 7. Soul work in the ordinary. The sacred hides in the rhythm of your daily life in brewing tea, walking, writing, listening. When you begin to see through the eyes of spirituality, you realize that spiritual awakening is not about reaching for something far beyond you, but about descending fully into the present moment. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." This truth reminds you that your hidden power does not awaken in rare moments of enlightenment, but in your willingness to meet the ordinary with divine attention. When you pour your tea slowly, feel its warmth, and watch the steam rise, you are practicing devotion without even knowing it. When you walk and feel the earth beneath your feet, each step becomes a silent prayer of connection. When you write, you are conversing with the unseen part of your soul. When you listen, you become the space where love itself can be heard. These simple moments, once overlooked, are in fact sacred rituals, bridges between your humanity and your divinity. Greatness is not born from extraordinary moments. It is born from doing small things with great love. As you cultivate mindful presence, life stops feeling like a race and begins to unfold as a living meditation. The act of washing your hands becomes a renewal of energy. Cooking becomes a ceremony of gratitude, and even breathing becomes an affirmation that you are one with the universe. The divine is not waiting in the distant heavens. It is breathing through every heartbeat, watching through your eyes, and moving through your touch. Every small act done with awareness transforms the ordinary into the miraculous. That is the essence of soul work, to meet each moment as sacred, to live as though the divine were present in every grain of sand, every drop of water, every second of silence. When you live this way, life itself becomes your temple. Each movement, each gesture, each word becomes a prayer whispered into eternity. You no longer need to chase enlightenment, because awareness itself becomes your path. Every thought aligned with love purifies your energy. Every act performed consciously raises your vibration, and every moment of stillness reconnects you with your higher self. This is where true spiritual awakening begins, not in escape, but in embodiment. You start to realize that the universe was never apart from you. It was always speaking through you, waiting for you to listen. The magic of life is not hidden. It only reveals itself when you slow down enough to see. The sacred was never missing. It was only waiting for your eyes to open. And when they do, you understand that every breath, every sound, and every silence is a holy conversation between your soul and the divine. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on transforming everyday moments into sacred rituals of growth and awakening. 8. Listening to symbols and synchronicities. Life constantly communicates with you through dreams, symbols, and coincidences that seem too precise to be accidents. Carl Jung called this synchronicity a meaningful alignment between your inner and outer worlds. It is the universe's way of mirroring your state of consciousness and guiding your spiritual development. Every time a number repeats, a song plays at the right moment, or someone's words echo your private thoughts, it's as if life itself is speaking directly to your soul. These moments are not random. They are the whispers of divine order woven through ordinary events, nudging you toward deeper self-awareness. The symbols that appear in your path are not meant to confuse you, but to awaken you. They are a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious mind, inviting you to explore what lies beneath the surface of your everyday reality. When you start paying attention to these subtle signs, you awaken a new kind of perception, a language of the soul that cannot be translated through logic alone. Jung once said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Through that door, your unconscious reveals what your conscious mind cannot yet see. A recurring dream, an image that won't leave your thoughts, or even an unexpected encounter might hold clues to your growth. Symbols often reflect your emotional landscape. Water can represent cleansing or renewal. Mountains can symbolize challenges that strengthen your spirit, and flight may express a deep desire for freedom. When you learn to interpret these symbols, you are no longer blind to the dialogue between your psyche and the universe. You begin to live consciously, seeing spirituality not as something distant or abstract, but as an ever-present conversation between your soul and existence itself. Listening to symbols requires sensitivity and trust. You must resist the urge to dismiss coincidences as meaningless. Instead, pause and ask, what is this trying to tell me? Repetition is one of the universe's favorite teachers. When a symbol appears again and again, it is calling for your attention. These are the moments when the veil between the conscious and unconscious becomes thin. You feel guided, connected, and supported by an invisible intelligence that transcends logic. Each event becomes a mirror reflecting a hidden part of yourself that longs to be understood. This process is the essence of spiritual development. It transforms random experiences into sacred messages, pain into wisdom, and confusion into awareness. As you continue to honor these synchronicities, life begins to reveal its pattern. Every experience, whether joyful or painful, carries meaning. Jung taught, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The key is to listen deeply, not with your ears, but with your awareness. When you learn to decode life symbols, you no longer feel like a victim of circumstance, but a co-creator in a divine pattern of evolution. Spirituality becomes an art of perception, a practice of seeing how every detail, every coincidence, and every dream is part of your unfolding story. The more you pay attention, the more the universe speaks, and you realize that life has always been guiding you. It's just that now you finally understand its language. 9. Practicing conscious gratitude. Gratitude shifts your vibration from ego to soul. It is not about ignoring pain, but about honoring every part of your journey. When you practice conscious gratitude, you awaken what Carl Jung called the deeper dimension of the self, the part of you that sees meaning in both joy and sorrow. Gratitude is not the denial of darkness. It is the light that makes sense of it. It heals the nervous system, softens your perception, and reminds you that even the hardest moments carry hidden wisdom. Each thank you whisper is like striking a match in the dark, a small flame that gradually illuminates the vastness of your inner world. You begin to see that life was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be meaningful. And gratitude helps you remember that. When you thank life, not for what is comfortable, but for what is real, you shift from resistance to acceptance. This simple act opens your heart and calms your mind, aligning your energy with peace instead of struggle. Gratitude turns chaos into clarity because it rewires the way you see yourself and the world. It transforms every wound into a teacher, every loss into a lesson, every delay into divine timing. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom teaches that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And gratitude is the daily ritual that gently guides you toward that becoming. When you appreciate even the challenges, you reclaim your power from the external world and return it to your soul, where real transformation happens. True gratitude is psychological alchemy. It dissolves the boundaries between pain and growth, between what you hoped for and what you received. It allows you to see that everything has served your awakening in one way or another. Gratitude is the art of saying, "Thank you for shaping me," even when life has not gone according to your plans. The more you embody this awareness, the more your energy expands beyond fear and enters harmony with the universe. It is not an act of forced positivity, but a deep recognition that your life is unfolding with purpose. Every breath becomes sacred, every experience becomes a teacher, and every thank you becomes a prayer that lifts you closer to your soul. Through the eyes of gratitude, existence stops being random. It becomes a dialogue between your spirit and the infinite. To affirm your awareness of life's blessings and your readiness to rise in higher consciousness, declare it with gratitude. Comment below. I am consciously grateful to anchor this vibration of appreciation within you and inspire others to walk the same path of spiritual awakening. 10. Reconnection with nature. Nature mirrors the hidden architecture of your soul, calm, balanced, and whole. When you walk among trees or stand before a vast ocean, something ancient inside you begins to stir, as if the earth itself is reminding you of who you truly are. Carl Jung believed that nature was not just scenery, but a living symbol of the self, the totality of your being, where your conscious and unconscious meet. In nature's silence, your mind softens, your breath deepens, and your fragmented thoughts begin to align. You feel the pulse of life moving through everything, the trees breathing with you, the wind carrying away your heaviness, the sunlight returning warmth to places inside you that had long gone cold. In spirituality, reconnecting with nature is not about escape, it's about remembrance. It's about remembering that you are not separate from life, but a part of its eternal rhythm. When you walk barefoot on the ground, you are touching the same earth that holds the memory of every living being. The river that flows teaches you trust. It never doubts its direction. The trees teach patience, silently growing toward the light without competition. The mountain teaches you stillness, reminding you that true strength does not need to move to prove its power. Every element of nature carries wisdom that words cannot express. And when you learn to listen, that wisdom begins to shape your inner world. Jung often spoke about the soul's longing for harmony, and nature offers this lesson effortlessly. The forest never rushes, yet everything within it thrives in divine timing. The rain falls without hesitation, cleansing what must be renewed. The soil receives decay and turns it into nourishment. When you allow yourself to be present in these cycles, you begin to see that your own healing follows the same pattern. Pain breaks you open. Time softens the edges. Renewal follows naturally, just as spring follows winter. This is the quiet miracle of spiritual awakening, to understand that nature's rhythm is your rhythm, and that every season of your life serves a sacred purpose. The modern world, however, makes forgetting easy. Surrounded by noise, artificial light, and endless distractions, the human psyche drifts away from its natural roots. Yet the soul aches for stillness, for simplicity, for the sound of the wind instead of the hum of machines. When you step into nature, you return to your original home, the one that exists beyond identity, beyond judgment, beyond striving. You are no longer the observer of life. You become life itself. In that sacred union, humility replaces pride, presence replaces anxiety, and gratitude replaces desire. The forest becomes your church, the sky your cathedral, and every breath a silent prayer. As you remember your place in this great living system, peace emerges naturally. You begin to sense that everything is connected, that every leaf and wave and breath participates in the same dance of existence. The more you align with this truth, the more you dissolve the illusion of separation that keeps humanity divided from the soul of the world. To reconnect with nature is to reconnect with your own divine essence, to rediscover that spirituality is not found in escaping the earth, but in embracing it completely. When you remember that you are nature, the boundaries between you and the universe fade, and what remains is wholeness, the quiet, steady knowing that you have always belonged. In the end, Carl Jung reminded us that true power doesn't come from the outer world. It is born from self-awareness, reflection, and daily inner work. These 10 psychological rituals are not just habits. They are doorways to awakening the hidden energy within you, transforming ordinary moments into opportunities for growth and self-mastery. When you practice them with intention, your life begins to shift from confusion to clarity, from fear to inner strength. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos that guide you toward deeper spirituality and self-realization.